He kept digging in the same spot every single day. His owner Tommy thought he had gone crazy. But what the dog found buried there would change their lives forever. Tommy Richardson had always considered himself lucky to have Max, his 3-year-old golden retriever. Max was everything you'd want in a dog: intelligent, loyal, playful, and incredibly well-behaved. Tommy had rescued him from a shelter when Max was just a puppy, and from day one, they'd been inseparable. Tommy lived in a modest 2-story house that he'd inherited from his grandmother, Eleanor Richardson, after she passed away 6 months ago. The house came with a large backyard filled with mature oak trees, flowering bushes, and a small vegetable garden that his grandmother had lovingly maintained for over 40 years. Eleanor had been a remarkable woman. At 87 years old, she'd been sharp as a tack right up until the end, always telling stories about the old days and sharing wisdom that Tommy sometimes wished he'd paid more attention to. She'd lived through the Great Depression, World War II, and had seen the neighborhood transform from farmland to the suburban community it was today. The first time Tommy noticed Max's strange behavior was on a crisp October morning, exactly 2 weeks after they'd moved into grandmother's house. Tommy was drinking his coffee on the back porch, enjoying the peaceful morning, when he saw Max in the far corner of the yard, digging enthusiastically near the old oak tree. "Max, no!" Tommy called out, assuming his dog was just being playful or had caught the scent of some small animal. "Come here, boy." But Max didn't come. He barely even looked up. His entire focus was concentrated on that one specific spot, and he continued digging with a determination that Tommy had never seen before. Tommy walked over to investigate, expecting to find evidence of buried bones or maybe signs of rabbits or squirrels that had caught Max's attention. But there was nothing obvious, just disturbed earth and a very focused dog who seemed to have a specific mission in mind. "What are you doing, buddy?" Tommy asked, kneeling down beside Max. The dog paused briefly to look at Tommy, his tail wagging slightly, but then immediately returned to his digging. It was as if Max was saying, "Trust me, I know what I'm doing." Tommy chalked it up to typical dog behavior and gently pulled Max away from the area, filling in the small hole his dog had created. He figured Max would find something else to capture his interest and that would be the end of it. He was wrong. The next morning, Tommy woke up to the sound of digging. Looking out his bedroom window, he saw Max in exactly the same spot, working even more intensely than the day before. The hole was already deeper than what Tommy had filled in, and Max showed no signs of giving up. "Max, what is wrong with you?" Tommy muttered, pulling on his robe and heading outside. This pattern continued for days. Every morning, Tommy would find Max digging in the same spot. Every evening, Tommy would fill in the hole. Every night, he'd go to bed hoping that Max would finally lose interest. But Max's behavior wasn't random or playful. There was something almost methodical about the way he dug. He wasn't frantically pawing at the earth like a dog chasing a scent. Instead, his digging was purposeful, systematic, as if he knew exactly what he was looking for and approximately where to find it. By the end of the first week, Tommy was genuinely concerned. Max had always been such a well-behaved dog, but now he seemed obsessed. The dog would spend hours at that spot, taking only brief breaks for food and water before returning to his excavation project. "Maybe I should call Dr. Peterson," Tommy told his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, during a conversation over the fence. Dr. Peterson was the local veterinarian who had been caring for neighborhood pets for over 20 years. "Has Max been eating normally?" Mrs. Chen asked, observing Max's dedicated digging from a distance. "Oh yes, he's eating fine. Sleeping normally too. It's just this weird obsession with that one spot in the yard. I'm starting to think he might have some kind of behavioral disorder." Mrs. Chen, who was in her 70s and had known Tommy's grandmother well, got a thoughtful look on her face. "You know, your grandmother's old dog, Buster, used to do something similar in that same general area. Eleanor never talked much about it, but I remember seeing Buster spending a lot of time over there too." This information intrigued Tommy. His grandmother had never mentioned anything unusual about Buster's behavior, but then again, there were probably a lot of things about the house and property that Eleanor had never shared with him. Tommy decided to let Max continue his digging for a few more days, just to see what would happen. Maybe his dog really did know something that Tommy didn't. Maybe there was actually something buried there that was worth finding. As the days turned into weeks, Max's dedication never wavered. If anything, he seemed to become more focused and determined. The hole grew deeper and wider, and Tommy found himself becoming genuinely curious about what, if anything, his dog might actually be searching for. Neighbors began to notice and comment on Max's unusual behavior. Some found it amusing, others thought it was concerning. The mailman joked that Max was probably trying to dig to China. The landscaper suggested that there might be a broken water pipe underground that was attracting the dog's attention. But Tommy was beginning to suspect that there was something more deliberate about Max's behavior. The dog never dug anywhere else in the yard. He never showed interest in any other spots, even when Tommy tried to distract him with toys or treats in different areas. It was always that one specific location, always with the same methodical approach. 3 weeks into Max's digging project, Tommy made a discovery that changed everything. While watching Max work, he noticed that his dog would occasionally pause and cock his head to one side, as if listening for something. Max would remain perfectly still for several seconds, then resume digging with renewed energy. Curious, Tommy knelt down next to the hole and tried to listen for whatever Max might be hearing. At first, he heard nothing unusual, just the normal sounds of the neighborhood and the rustling of leaves in the oak tree overhead. But then, as he focused more intently, Tommy thought he detected something. It was incredibly faint, almost imperceptible, but there seemed to be a very subtle metallic sound coming from deeper in the earth. It was barely audible, and Tommy wasn't even sure if he was really hearing it or just imagining it. "What are you hearing, boy?" Tommy whispered to Max. The dog looked at him with those intelligent brown eyes, tail wagging slightly, as if he was pleased that Tommy was finally beginning to understand. That evening, Tommy called Dr. Peterson to discuss Max's behavior. After describing the situation in detail, Dr. Peterson offered an interesting perspective. Dogs have incredibly sensitive hearing, the veterinarian explained. They can detect sounds at frequencies and volumes that are completely inaudible to humans. It's entirely possible that Max is hearing something underground that you can't perceive. But what could be making a sound underground? Tommy asked. Well, it could be water moving through pipes, or perhaps some kind of metal object that's shifting or vibrating due to temperature changes or ground movement. Dogs are also sensitive to electromagnetic fields and can sometimes detect buried metal objects that create subtle energy signatures. Dr. Peterson suggested that if Tommy was really curious, he might consider renting a metal detector to see if there was actually something metallic buried in that location. The idea of using a metal detector had never occurred to Tommy, but the more he thought about it, the more sense it made. If Max was detecting some kind of buried metal object, a metal detector would confirm it quickly and definitively. The next day, Tommy drove to the local hardware store and rented a professional-grade metal detector. He'd never used one before, but the store clerk gave him a quick tutorial on how to operate the device and interpret its signals. When Tommy returned home with the metal detector, Max was, predictably, at his usual digging spot. But when Max saw the metal detector, his behavior changed dramatically. The dog became extremely excited, running back and forth between Tommy and the hole, barking with what could only be described as enthusiasm and approval. "Okay, boy, let's see what you've been trying to tell me," Tommy said, turning on the metal detector and slowly sweeping it over the area where Max had been digging. The response was immediate and unmistakable. The metal detector began beeping rapidly and consistently, indicating the presence of a significant metallic object buried several feet below the surface. The signal was strong and covered an area roughly 3 feet by 3 feet, much larger than a simple pipe or small buried object. Tommy's heart began racing. Whatever was down there was substantial, and Max had somehow known about it all along. "Good boy, Max," Tommy said excitedly. "You really did find something." Max responded with joyful barking and enthusiastic tail wagging, as if he was saying, "Finally. I've been trying to tell you this for weeks." Tommy spent the rest of the day carefully expanding the hole that Max had started. He was methodical and cautious, not wanting to damage whatever might be buried there. As he dug deeper, the metal detector's signals grew stronger and more consistent. At a depth of about 4 feet, Tommy's shovel struck something hard and metallic. His heart pounded as he carefully cleared away the dirt to reveal the corner of what appeared to be a large metal box or chest. "Oh my God, Max," Tommy whispered. "You actually found treasure." Working carefully over the next several hours, Tommy excavated around the entire perimeter of the buried object. It was indeed a metal chest, approximately 3 feet long, 2 feet wide, and about 18 inches deep. The chest was old and showed signs of corrosion, but it appeared to be structurally sound. The chest was heavier than Tommy had expected, requiring considerable effort to lift it out of the hole. Max supervised the entire operation, staying close and watching intently as if he understood the significance of what they were uncovering. Once the chest was safely on the surface, Tommy examined it more closely. It was made of heavy steel and had obviously been buried for many years. There was no visible lock, just a simple latch mechanism that had corroded but was still functional. Tommy's hands were shaking as he carefully opened the latch and lifted the lid of the chest. What he found inside took his breath away. The chest was filled with carefully wrapped items, each protected by what appeared to be oiled cloth or waterproof material. As Tommy unwrapped the first bundle, he discovered a collection of old photographs, documents, and what appeared to be jewelry. But it was the letter on top that stopped him cold. Written in his grandmother's distinctive handwriting, it was addressed simply to "My dear family." With trembling hands, Tommy opened the letter and began to read. "If you are reading this, then someone has finally found my time capsule. I buried this collection in 1987, hoping that someday my family would discover the treasures I've saved for them. I chose this spot under the old oak tree because it was always my favorite place in the yard, and I hoped it would be protected here. Inside this chest, you'll find photographs and documents that tell the story of our family's history. There are pictures of your grandfather during the war, documents from when we first bought this house, and jewelry that has been passed down through generations of Richardson women. But more importantly, you'll find the deed to the property adjacent to our backyard, 2.3 acres that I purchased secretly in 1985 as an investment for future generations. The property is now worth considerably more than what I paid for it, and I wanted it to be a surprise gift for my family. I also included some rare coins and a few pieces of gold jewelry that belonged to my mother and grandmother. These items have both sentimental and monetary value, and I wanted them to be preserved for future generations. I trained Buster to know about this spot, though I never told him to dig for it. Dogs have remarkable memories and instincts, and I suspected that any future dog living in this house might somehow sense what was buried here. Consider this my final gift to you, not just the treasures in this chest, but the reminder that sometimes the most valuable things in life are hidden right under our feet, waiting to be discovered by those who are patient and observant enough to recognize the signs. All my love. Grandmother Eleanor. P.S. If a dog led you to this treasure, give him an extra treat from me. Animals often know things that we humans take much longer to figure out." Tommy sat in stunned silence, reading the letter multiple times as tears ran down his face. Max sat beside him, looking up with those intelligent brown eyes as if he understood the magnitude of what they had discovered. As Tommy carefully examined the contents of the chest, he realized that his grandmother had been incredibly thoughtful and strategic. The property deed alone represented a significant financial windfall. The adjacent land was now worth over $500,000 due to the area's development and increased property values. The photographs told the story of 3 generations of the Richardson family, including pictures Tommy had never seen before. There were images of his grandparents as newlyweds, photos of his father as a child, and documentation of family milestones and celebrations. The jewelry was beautiful and obviously valuable, but more importantly, it connected Tommy to female ancestors he had never known. Each piece came with a small note explaining its history and significance. But perhaps most amazingly, Tommy found a collection of rare coins that his grandmother had been collecting for decades. She had carefully researched and acquired coins that she believed would appreciate significantly in value over time. Her instincts had been correct. The collection was now worth considerably more than what she had originally paid. Tommy looked at Max, who was sitting patiently beside the open chest, tail wagging gently. "Max, do you understand what you've done?" he asked softly. "You've given me back my family history. You've connected me to generations of Richardsons that I never knew about." Max responded by nuzzling Tommy's hand and then looking back at the chest, as if he was proud of their joint accomplishment. Dr. Peterson later explained that Max's behavior was consistent with dogs who have inherited genetic memories or have been influenced by residual sense and environmental cues from previous animals. "It's possible that your grandmother's dog, Buster, left scent markers or behavioral patterns that Max somehow detected and interpreted," he said. "Dogs have remarkable abilities to sense things that we don't fully understand." Tommy spent the following weeks carefully cataloging and researching everything in the chest. The total value of the discovered treasures was substantial, but more importantly, they provided Tommy with a connection to his family history that he had never experienced before. The adjacent property became a valuable investment that would secure Tommy's financial future. The rare coins and jewelry provided both monetary value and sentimental connection to his ancestors. But the photographs and documents were priceless in terms of family heritage and personal meaning. Tommy had the adjacent property surveyed and discovered that it included waterfront access to a small lake, making it even more valuable than he had initially realized. His grandmother had been remarkably prescient in her investment choices. 6 months after Max's discovery, Tommy decided to honor his grandmother's memory by creating a small memorial garden in the spot where the treasure chest had been buried. He planted Eleanor's favorite flowers around the old oak tree and installed a small bronze plaque that read, "Eleanor Richardson, a woman who knew that the greatest treasures are the gifts we leave for those we love." Max seemed to approve of the memorial garden, often spending time there in the evenings, though he never resumed digging. It was as if he understood that his mission had been completed successfully. Tommy also established a trust fund using a portion of the discovered wealth, ensuring that future generations of the Richardson family would benefit from Eleanor's thoughtful planning and Max's remarkable persistence. The story of Max's treasure hunting became legendary in the neighborhood. Children would often ask Tommy to tell them about the dog who found buried treasure, and Max became something of a local celebrity, always happy to pose for pictures near the memorial garden. Dr. Peterson documented Max's case for a veterinary journal article about animals' remarkable sensory abilities and their capacity for seemingly inexplicable behavior that later proves to have logical explanations. Tommy never forgot the lesson that Max had taught him about patience, persistence, and trusting in things that might not immediately make sense. Sometimes the most valuable discoveries require us to pay attention to signals that seem unusual or inconvenient, he would tell visitors. "Max taught me that just because I don't understand something doesn't mean it isn't important." Today, Tommy and Max still live in Eleanor's house, but their lives have been transformed by the discovery that Max's persistence made possible. The house has been renovated and expanded using the treasure money. The adjacent property has been developed into a beautiful nature preserve that honors Eleanor's memory, and Tommy has been able to pursue philanthropic projects that his grandmother would have supported. But perhaps most importantly, Tommy learned to trust Max's instincts completely. Whenever Max shows unusual interest in something, Tommy pays attention. "He's already proven that he knows things I don't," Tommy says with a smile. "I'm not going to doubt him again." The bond between Tommy and Max deepened considerably after their treasure hunting adventure. They had shared an experience that neither of them would ever forget, and Max had proven that sometimes the most extraordinary discoveries come from the most ordinary seeming situations. Eleanor's final gift wasn't just the treasure chest and its valuable contents. Her real gift was teaching her family that love and wisdom can transcend time, that careful planning can benefit generations, and that sometimes the most important messages are delivered by the animals who share our lives. Max had been the perfect messenger for Eleanor's final lesson, that the greatest treasures are often hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered by those who are patient enough to dig deeper and wise enough to pay attention to the signals that others might dismiss. Thank you for joining us for this incredible story of persistence, family legacy, and the remarkable intuition of a dog who knew exactly where to look for buried treasure. If this amazing tale of discovery touched your heart, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more extraordinary animal stories that prove our pets often know much more than we give them credit for. Remember, sometimes the most valuable treasures are right under our feet, waiting for the right moment and the right companion to help us find them.